now call to order the Public Works Committee meeting dated Thursday, February 22nd, 2018. Roll call, please, Kathy.
Yes, sir. Mr. Abshire?
Here.
Mr. Angelpont, Mr. Guillory, and Mrs. Trimmy are all out of town attending the Louisiana Police Jury Association Executive Board meeting this evening. Mr. Barris?
Here.
President Barris, excuse me. Mr. Collins had another commitment this evening. Mr. Farnham?
Here.
Mr. Guidry?
Here.
Mr. Landry?
Here.
Mr. Latour?
Here.
Ms. Mayo? Here. Vice Chairman McMillan?
Here.
Mr. Scott?
Here.
Mr. White? And Chairman Brain.
Here.
You do have a quorum.
Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
We'll go to item 3. Consideration of making a recommendation.
So move.
To adopting a resolution approving a professional engineering contract for the Packing House Road multi-bridge replacement project. Have a motion by Mr. Latour, second by Mr. Abshire. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that motion will carry. Item 4, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution approving an active sale agreement for the Goche Road Lake Charles Regional Airport Sewer Transport System Project, Phase 2. A motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. McMillan. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that motion will carry. Item 5, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution approving a cooperative endeavor agreement for the reconstruction and maintenance of Pine Hill Cemetery Road in Ward 8. Have a motion by Ms. Mayo and a second by Mr. Scott. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that motion will carry. Item 6.
Missed that.
Consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution approving a memorandum of agreement for the expedited processing of section 10/404.
So moved.
Applications. Second. Have a motion by Mr. Latour and a second by Mr. Farnham. Mr. Latour. Like to speak?
No, sir, I was.
Mr. Scott.
Who's going to answer my question?
I think John Bruce can answer that. Was this on the core item number 6?
Yeah, the core item. So is this for, how is this actually going to work? Give me is this for all of our projects, anything that the Corps deals with when it comes to this particular type of permitting?
As it's written, it's very flexible as far as the needs of the parish that would need to go through this process. It's not restricted.
And so how is this going to work? We got somebody specifically working with them? Did they hire some? I mean, how does this help us, I guess, is what I'm asking. Can't hurt us, I know that, anything with the Corps, so.
The way it works is you pay in advance. You pay an agreed-upon sum up front. You have a minimum balance that is allowed to go to. The balance is drawn down by man-hours associated with the task orders that we would send in, the applications and such that we would send in. As the balance goes down to a defined amount, we get notice. If we want to continue with the agreement, we pony up again, we bring the balance back up and continue the process.
It's like a fast pass.
Exactly. It's if you're familiar with toll roads in Houston, that's in the easy tag, that's what it is.
And it automatically so how many permits are we looking at this automatic? When did this take place, and how many permits is that actually going to start helping automatically, basically?
You act on it today, and a week from now, we then submit it to the Corps for their final execution. They tell us that will be timely, so I would say, they could have it processed, hopefully 30, 60 days, something like that. Then once it's signed, we have the deposit to make, the upfront payment, and then it's active.
How many other people are they doing this with? Is this a great product that they're offering up, or are we a guinea pig?
We're aware of 2 other agreements in the area, public bodies that are using this, and we haven't had any negative feedback in our research on it.
All right, I'm looking forward to it and hope it helps out. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Landry.
I'm going to give you the negative feedback. Is this what you tried to call me about today?
Yes,
I
sir.
couldn't hear what you were saying. Okay. First of all, it's taken them 3 years just to do that. Didn't this start like 3 years ago? Took them 3 years to decide that, oh, okay, yeah, we'll do that. And it was their idea. They're the ones that brought this to us whenever we were complaining about how long it took. Oh, you could do this. There's a couple other places done that. Then 3 years later, they finally decided to, that's ridiculous. Another thing, this is a waste of money, and here's why. We're already paying them. They're already being paid. All the taxes they're collecting all across the United States to do their job. And now we have to pay them again for them to do it in a timely manner. Go ahead.
Well, I just want.
Tell me I'm wrong.
I know better than to do that. Here's our approach. I think you make some great points. We felt like, we all know how long these permits take. If there's something that is, and I don't know the cost off the top of my head, that is reasonable for a period of time, that helps us get these quicker and developments get done better, it's worth it. If it ain't working, I think we probably come back and go, let's not do it anymore, but it was worth a try. And John is right. I think the port, I don't know the other public body, they feel like it has helped them now. Is the Corps gonna give you we'll do it 90 days quicker? No. We feel like it's worth a try. It's obviously a judgment call, and we need y'all to decide. But all that is correct, you're saying. They're supposed to, but it doesn't happen. This was one way to try to expedite, not just for y'all, but obviously for private developments that are counting on this. It really cripples economic development. We all know that. So in any edge, it's sort of like, we think it's, like it or not, we acknowledge that you shouldn't have to pay more, but if it isn't worth it, we'll be the first to come back and say, we'd like to get out of this, but that's y'all's call, obviously.
I just can't wait to see how long it's gonna take. So now, instead of 3 or 4 years, maybe it'll only take a year and a half. And then we'll say, wow, they're doing great. I mean, I'm gonna vote for it, because what else are you gonna do? But we should know how long. Within a year, we ought to know, shouldn't we?
That's what we hope, we're anticipating a heavy volume on our side, so that's gonna be the test. So we would think we'd be able to evaluate it pretty quickly.
And this contract is what? Is it for a year?
Three-year term, but it can be terminated at any point by either
Oh,
party.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Mr. President.
You know, there was a show a long time ago, and I wish I had one of those props. The main prop from the show was a gong. I'd hit the gong right now. I mean, are they gonna hire more people? I mean, because if we're gonna pay them just to do their job in a timely manner, well, do they hire anybody else? Do they buy any new software with this? Are they working extra hours? Probably the answer to all those questions is probably no. So when they do something faster, well, that just proves to us, well, heck, you can do it. You can do it with the resources that you had. You're just saying you want more money. They want more money, of our money, to be sitting in a bank, probably drawing interest. I don't get it. I don't get how this is. What it's like a shakedown or something. I don't know. It just. I don't know. I don't like it, but I guess we'll play the game. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. McMillan.
John, while I have you up there, we're talking about the Corps, and of course, anything we could do to expedite Coach Williams Road and move it forward. Hopefully, these type things will be something that we can utilize on the fast pass to get these things moving. Could you give me a quick update on how close we are to having the Corps' permit on Coach Williams Road so we can move forward with that?
Yes, sir, and appreciate the question. We're anticipating the fully executed permit from the Corps in early March.
Well, maybe this money will help spur them along, but we need it, and we've been waiting a long time, and thank you for your help and what you're doing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Is there any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that motion will carry. Thank you, John. Item 7, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution accepting Calhoun Parish Project Number 2015-08.
Move on, second.
Oche Road, Lake Charles Regional Airport Sewer Transport System, Phase 1 in Calhoun Parish as substantially complete. Have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. Guidry. Any discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Scott.
This is another one of those projects that took a long time, but this is one that is truly gonna be an economic development boost for all of South Lake Charles, the whole airport. You know, I believe that that area is gonna grow as fast as Nelson Road has here recently. With sewer and water out there now, I can only imagine how fast that's gonna grow. So thank you for all y'all's hard work, and looking forward to getting phase 2 started pretty quick.
All right, thank you,
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman.
Scott. Mr. Farnum.
Thank you. It's well said, Dennis. It's been about 6 years in the making,
Since-
and since it first took off. And when do we anticipate somebody actually putting something into this system? Is there anybody tied into it or prospectively tied into it?
I'll ask John to come back up, please. He knows.
He's the guy with all the answers.
Yeah.
tonight.
Yes, sir. We anticipate in the next few months, we'll have two primary users, and those two primary users are the airport and Burton Coliseum. Both of them need to do infrastructure improvements of their own to be able to connect to the system and use it. The airport is actively under that contract now. So we anticipate in a few months, we'll have those two users.
I know that was one of the big selling points of this thing at one time was Burton actually going into it because they had a system that was kind of on the borderline of needing a lot of money spent on it to get it back up to standard. So it's good to see this coming together, and it's going to work out real well for one of our big big buildings on that corridor down there, as well as the airport. So it's come along right about at the right time. So good deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farnum. Is there any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that motion will carry. Item 8, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution accepting Maggie's
Move on
Ridge
ahead.
Phase 1 subdivision. Motion by Mr. Barris, second by Mr. Landry. Is there any discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Barris.
Mr. Bruce? I tried to say, hang on for a second. And I've gotten a lot of questions, and then this is just for my knowledge, so I can answer the folks out there. You know, everybody's been wondering, this place has been sitting dormant, you know, with no movement, little or no movement on it. Gosh, for a couple of years now, it seems, or a year. What was the holdup, and what did they have to do to get it going?
We're talking about Maggie's Ridge.
Yes, sir.
The project was constructed. Toward the end of the project, there were some deficiencies found in the pavement that required a remedial action plan, and those deficiencies have since been addressed, and it is now proposed that it be accepted for into the system.
So that's it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And, really? Okay.
I'll take care of number 9 too, Bob.
All righty. Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. John.
Okay, Mr. Barris, thank you. Any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that motion will carry. We'll go to number 9, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting
Move on 9.
a resolution
Second.
accepting Maggie's Ridge Phase 2 subdivisions. Motion by Mr. Barris, second by Mr. Latour. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that motion carries. Oh,
What meeting?
messing me up. Oh, go ahead.
I assume this is the same type of problem?
I think yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Ms. Barris. Any discussion, objection? Hearing none, that motion will carry. Number 10 is advise that Calcasieu Parish was found to be in full compliance by the law by the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development for the 2017 annual report. Are there any other matters for consideration?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. We are adjourned.
I now call the Agenda Committee meeting to order. The purpose of today's committee meeting is to formulate an agenda for the regular meeting of the police jury on March 1st, 2018. I need a motion and a second.
So
on
moved.
Item 18.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. Guidry. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. A, Ms. Laura P. Richardson, Calcasieu Parish Public Library System.
Move on, Ms. Richards.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Abshire. Mr. Robert Daughtry, Calcasieu Parish
reappoint.
Public Safety.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Farnum and a second by Mr. Guidry. C, Mr. Ronald Phelps, Calcasieu Parish
Move to
Public Safety.
defer for 30 days.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Mr. Brain to defer for 30 days, and a second by Mr. Farnum. D, Mr. Kenneth Jerry Merchant, Calcasieu Parish Public
Move to
Safety
reappoint.
Communications. Move to reappoint by Mr. Farnum, and a second by Mr. McMillan. D,
Any discussion?
I'm sorry, any discussion? I know I was moving too fast. Any discussion? Any objection? I apologize. Motion carries. I'm at D. D, Mr. Kenneth Jerry Merchant, Calcasieu Parish Public Safety Communication.
Move to reappoint.
Yes.
Second.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Farnum and a second by Mr. Brain. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. We're back on track now. Mr. Donald Stinson, Gravity Drainage District Number 2 of Ward 7.
Move on E,
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bears
to reappoint Mr. Donald Stinson.
to reappoint Mr. Donald Stinson and a second by Mr. Guidry. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. F, Mr. Harry O'Quinn.
Move to
Gravity Drainage
reappoint
District
Mr.
Number
Harry
2 of
O'Quinn.
Ward 7. We have a motion by Mr. Bears and a second by Mr. McMillan. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Mr. Freddie Carrier, Gravity Drainage
Move
District
to
Number
reappoint
2 of
Mr.
Ward
Freddie
7.
Carrier.
We have a motion by Mr. Bears, second by Mr. Farnum. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Mr. Tony Daughtry, Ward 4, Fire Protection, District Number 2.
Move to reappoint Mr. Tony Daughtry.
I have a motion by Mr. Bears, second by Mr. Farnum. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Mr. Milton Castillo, Ward 4,
Move to
Fire
defer for
Protection
30
Number 2.
days.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bears to defer for 30 days, and second by Mr. Farnum. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Mr. Gordon Probst, Imperial Calcasieu Human Services.
Move to
Authority
appoint
for
Aaron
the
LaBeouf.
Region 5 areas of the Louisiana
Second.
Department of Health and Hospitals. Have a motion by Mr. Abshire and a second by Mr. Scott.
Point,
Any discussion?
wait,
I have to say his name?
to appoint Mr. Aaron LaBeouf was the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's to appoint Mr. Aaron LaBeouf. We have a motion by Mr. Abshire and a second by Mr. Scott.
Mr. Latour.
Mr. Latour.
I know I'm blinding you with this beautiful shirt. I'm sorry.
Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
And a second.